on. I gotta check Twitter
You
first.
gotta check.
I want to see it. I want to see if it works. I'm quite interested. Although the thing is, if I'm logged into my own account, oh, it says, "Welcome to our live show. Eric Barnes is live streaming." Oh, sweet,
That's good.
nice. Okay. Oh, I've got another thing. I'm getting all official and fancy. So,
Oh, love it.
my kids got me that for I think my birthday. I was like, that'd be
That's pretty
sweet.
fun.
And then I haven't used it yet, but I was like, well, I'm gonna take it to the office and give it. I don't know. We'll do something fun with it eventually.
That's good.
Um,
That's good. Love it.
yes. All right. Let me drink some coffee and we'll get the show started. Welcome to our live show. All right. Let
Welcome.
me do a little intro here. Got my notes. Good to go. Got my dragon. You got the
Love the dragon.
Laracon AU shirt.
Got the elephant.
Perfect. All right. All right. So, welcome back to the Laravel News Creator Spotlight. With me today is none other than Michael Dyrynda, the creator of Laracon AU, the man that is on more podcasts than I have kids, and just all around great dude. So, welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, um, let's just start off basic. What is a good reason somebody should come to Laracon AU?
A good reason. This is something that I, um as the organizer, think a lot about. Because people often ask, and I have conversations with business owners and technology leaders and people leaders and things like that, and it is different for different people. Um, for you attending Laracon US, like I know going to Laracon US for the most part is about catching up with old friends, making new friends, meeting people that you have maybe interacted with online for the first time. And so the community and networking aspect of it, and I think that really shone through in a lot of the talks this year. Kapehe's talk, Aaron's talk last year as well, like just the connectedness. And I think that is the biggest aspect of conferences is the people and the connections, the people you meet and the connections you make. And whether that is friendships or that's, you know, picking up a new job or meeting someone that you end up working with in the future, collaborating on open source, things like that. Like all of these things, you don't really have any preconceived notions of when you go to a conference for the first time. So it really does vary. And if you look at the people attending the conferences, like last year at Laracon AU, at least 65, 70% of the audience were first timers, like people that had never been to a Laracon. And the feel that I got from this year's Laracon US was it was very much the same. There was a lot of people were there for the first time. So, and whether that's lots of experience programming but attending a conference for the first time, or that's new to programming and attending your first conference with very little experience, there's, making sure that you can welcome those people, that you can make the conference approachable for those people, that they don't feel, isolated or alone. So yeah, what is the main reason to go to a conference is gonna, as with anything in programming, it's gonna depend.
Absolutely. I go to talk to people because, like, I don't know. It feels like you can't do that in my little world where I live in that nobody even knows what I do. It's always
Yeah,
fun to actually be around people that actually, at least we can have a conversation about something that we both have interest in.
yeah.
Um, so moving from there, so this is the first year it's actually moved locations, right? So this year you're going to be in Brisbane.
Brisbane,
Did I say that right? Brisbane?
Brisbane. Yep, swallow the A.
Brisbane.
Don't just pretend it's not there.
And so how far away is that from Sydney?
It's about a 2 hour flight. It's about an 8, 9 hour drive, depending on how adventurous you're feeling. So yeah, it's a bit further up the coast, on the same side of Australia. So it's still it's the only 24/7 airport in Australia. It's the biggest one we've got. So it's a very well connected city.
That's awesome. So in relation to sort of Australia, like what's the probably the biggest like Laravel city? Like which city has the most Laravel developers? I guess is a better way of wording that.
Well, I mean, I thought Sydney was probably the bigger one, just because I mean that's where we've had the last three Laracons, and that's where we've seen the majority of attendees from. I think this year moving to Brisbane, there was a bit of a is it is it going to be problematic? Like, are we going to the people that went last year that were living in Sydney, were they only there because it was in Sydney, or are they going to travel? Are we going to make up numbers of people who don't come from Sydney with people from Brisbane? And I think it's kind of balanced out. So I think it looks as though they're fairly on par. I know that Perth has like a really big community over there, and they're starting to grow it. Their Hatchet, who's one of our or is our platinum sponsor this year, um, they're starting the ball rolling on getting a Laravel meetup going there regularly. So Brisbane always had a really big PHP scene. I think it's niched down a little bit into Laravel, and they're trying to keep that ball rolling as well. So yeah, it's going to be either Brisbane or Sydney, but I think that's also um, consistent with like there being the majority of the tech jobs in those two
Mhm.
cities as well. Um, Certainly in PHP and Laravel at least.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so moving from there, so this is going to be your fourth Laracon AU because I think COVID knocked one or two out, right? Um, so I'm curious more about like your origin story, like when and like what was your epiphany being like, hey, I want to create a conference in Australia for
Mhm.
Laravel. So how did all
Yep.
that come about?
I actually went into this as part of my welcome address at last year's Laracon, so I'll hit like the high notes. But it like came down to I had been using PHP for 7 or 8 years, I reckon, before I discovered that there was this whole other world out there of all these other PHP programmers around the world. That there was these things called frameworks. Like I didn't know frameworks existed because everything that I did at that first job for the better part of a decade was all hand rolled PHP. We had no notion of frameworks. We didn't even have the concept of we'll build our own framework at that point. It was all just hand rolled PHP 3 that became PHP 4 and PHP 5. So when I kind of started to realize that there was a bigger community out there, when I discovered Laravel at the tail end of version 3 into the start of version 4, I think that was around the time that the first Laracon US happened, sort of around 2014, I think, back then. Um, and so, it was always like aspirational to go and attend a conference. And we had one PHP conference in Australia at the time, and I went to that in 2016, and I thought it was pretty good. But I wanted to kind of explore more of what the Laravel community looked like, and then 2017, I want to say, I went to Louisville and saw Laracon US and met my people, and that really was what it was, right? It was the community, it was the connection, it was meeting Jake and David Hemphill and TJ Miller and yourself, like all of these people that I'd been talking to online. Matt Stauffer was a big part of my origin story in getting into the public side of Laravel and sort of putting myself out there. And so yeah, it was on the back of that I went, you know being married at the time, but not with any kids. I was like, it's an expense, right, for someone from Australia to fly 16 hours to the US or 13 hours, depending on where it is. The cost of flights, the cost of accommodation, the exchange rate, like all of this stuff. So I'm like, well, wouldn't it be great if we had something closer? Because even Europe, even further away, really, and nothing sort of this side of the world. So I emailed Tyler and I was like, hey, is this a thing that we can do? Because traveling to the other side of the world is kind of rubbish. And he was all for it. He came back and was like, "Yep, no worries." And it took me like 2 years before we actually had the first Laracon AU. But that really was the genesis of it. Just I want something for the people that like want to have a taste of what Laracon is, but they're not in a position to commit to traveling all that way, all that time, spending all of that money to go and do that. So that's
Yeah.
that's where we are.
I love it. That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's Australia's always been on my bucket list. I keep telling you I'm going to come one year. As soon as the kids are old enough to take care of themselves and drive themselves around, it's definitely on my list. It's like got to do
Look
this.
forward to it.
Um, the other thing that I thought was new this year on the website, it says you're going to have more social and networking events than normal. Is so you're adding like more like just, I guess, more time in for everything, or
Yeah.
how are you planning that?
So we've got two like official events. So we have always had an after dark event on the first night of the conference because everyone is staying for most of the second day. What we find is that lots of people, because we do a Thursday or Friday, and I don't know if we'll change that in the future. Maybe we'll do a Tuesday Wednesday, like Laracon US, or Wednesday Thursday, something like that in the middle of the week. Lots of people are heading off at 3, 4, 5 o'clock on the second day and heading back home for the weekend. So we're trying to enable more people, and we're trying to encourage them, I guess, to stay the second night to come for another event. And it seems as though it's played out pretty well because last year in Sydney, the venue we had was really good. The theatre staff were really good, all of that, but the foyer was very small. And so there wasn't really the ability for people to kind of socialize in the breaks during lunch. We were in Darling Quarter, which was restaurants and like loads of outdoor areas and things like that. So people could go out. But what we found and what we heard from, people that gave us feedback was, there's not the opportunity to interact with each other. And so that was a big focus for me this year, was to figure out how do we encourage, facilitate, make that available to people. And, that was in part a bigger venue that had a foyer that we could keep people in to cater for lunch, to put the sponsors in there so that people can hang out and talk to each other in the breaks. Um, the people that speak on the second day, because people are looking to leave, the conference kind of ends and everyone just goes home. By putting on that second day networking event after the conference, it means that those speakers get the opportunity to speak with people about their talk, so they're not disadvantaged by speaking on the second day. And then we kind of wrap that all up in this notion of watering holes, where we've gone to a couple of venues in Brisbane near to where the conference is going to be, and we've said, hey, we're going to have some number of people. Can you give us a space? Can you give us some drink specials, some food specials, and whatever? And then that way, through our Telegram chat, the people beforehand can say, hey, I want to go to this, I'm going to this thing, who am I going to see there? And there's like, this is a place that you can go knowing that there will be other Laracon people there, and you can, catch up and hang out with them without sort of having to do, like, I know that Laracon US and Laracon AU have had like unofficial Telegram chats, and people have tried to like organize things, but when it's like not sanctioned, it's like, who am I going to hang out with? And you end up with these fragmented groups. So, we're just trying to facilitate people having as many opportunities as possible to network in and around the conference, to really make those friendships. Because, there are loads of people sending, or companies sending their people, but there's also heaps of solo developers, entrepreneurs, freelancers, like that kind of thing, that don't have the connections. And so, giving them people that they can meet, and, maybe they can strike off a friendship, and then that goes between the conference. Like, that's what we're really trying to achieve here. It's to connect the community more than just putting them in a room for 2 days.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah, because it's I owe pretty much my whole career to like going to a conference when I was I don't know, a decade ago, but man, it might have been 15. It was probably more than a decade, probably 20 years ago. I went to a conference and met a bunch of people, and we still stay in touch. It's amazing,
Yeah.
like the connections you can make at these conferences. That part's lovely. I know you're talking about the discounts, and you also have a discount on the hotel, like if you are flying into Brisbane. And the picture you have on the website looks amazing. Like the
Yeah.
view coming out is really sweet.
Yeah, the Brisbane Sky Tower is one of, I think, 8 different properties owned by that group. And it's like, 50, 60 stories tall. It's at like the bend in the Brisbane River, so you can see all around the CBD behind you. You've got the river, you've got the hills. So yeah, spectacular views there. And I saw someone tweet just yesterday, actually. They're like, did you know you can call a hotel and ask for a discount? And they'll like give you a discount? That was all
Yes.
it was. Like, lots of these places, it's just like, oh, I'm hosting an event and I want somewhere to send our people, and they're like, yep, here's the offer, like 10% off, 15% off, the best rate, best available for those specific dates, and I don't have to do anything. It's just here it is. We've just enabled it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. Here like I live in a little small town, and we have a whole like tourism committee or branch
Yeah.
of the government or something like that.
Yep.
So like you can actually contact them, and they'll
Yeah.
like give you money to run an event in their town just
Hmm.
because they're going to get the
Yeah.
tax money and
Yep.
have people downtown. So it's
Brisbane.
amazing the resources out there.
Yeah, Brisbane is the same thing. I didn't know about this, but Greg Skirman, who spoke at Laracon AU last year, put me in touch. He knew someone in the local council, and they put me in touch with the Brisbane Economic Development Agency, and their entire reason for being is to get people to host their events in Brisbane to facilitate all of this stuff. So they put out the red carpet when I said I'd like an event. They hooked me up with um, 4 different venues that I went and looked at. They put me in contact with people at those venues. They gave me suggestions around, I mean, the watering hole really is their idea. We had the notion of like we wanted to do something, but they're like, no, this is what it's called, I guess. And they put me in contact with venues, and a lot of that stuff. So when people say, oh, it must be a lot of work. Yes, it is a lot of work to organize a conference, but there's also, if you know where to look, a lot of support for event organizers. And like, I wouldn't recommend that everyone go out and organize an event. It is a tremendous amount of work and organization, and there's like things that you don't even think of that all these unknown unknowns along the way. But if you have the right people around you, a lot of it is made a lot simpler. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, you're right. Lots of cities have those development agencies because they want to bring tourism, they want to bring people into their cities. Brisbane loves to steal events away from Sydney. There's like the intercity rivalry there, so they were happy to throw out all these ideas and things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I want to. My goal is to coordinate a golf tournament, like a tech golf tournament. But it's like the logistics behind this scares me more than like I think going
Yeah.
would be cool, but like, man, it's gonna be so much work, and it's like that's
Hmm.
gonna be crazy. Um, all right, well, let's move on. So Laracon.au is the website for everything
Yep.
Laracon AU, and it is coming up. What are the dates again? It's in November.
November 7th and 8th. Yeah.
So get your tickets now before it sells out and you can't get them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the lodging and everything. Got to get everything booked and set up.
Hmm.
So to transition a little, in the intro, I said you had more podcasts than I have kids, and I think that's accurate. I was thinking, so you do the Laravel News podcast here on Laravel News. We appreciate that with Jacob Bennett. Then you have North Meets South with Jacob Bennett, and then now you started another one, right? It's I can't even think of the name of it.
Ripples. Yep. Yeah, I've got Ripples,
Ripples.
and Ripples was born off the back of Laracon AU last year. This idea that I didn't know how to illustrate or how to verbalize this idea of like you do things in life to kind of it was taking Aaron's concept of like do things and good things will come your way, right? And it was like, well, you don't know what things are going to land, and then I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, well, yeah, it's like a ripple. When you drop a ripple, you don't know where those things fan out and when they overlap and things like that. So Ripples was born out of that, and so we interview not famous people, pillars of the Laravel community, but just people that have better outcomes in life now because of the ripples through their life. You know, whatever they threw out there, whenever it happened. We had Aaron on. We've spoken to Rissa Jackson. We've spoken to Tim McDonald, Jess Archer. People that you know, and maybe some that you don't. 12 months ago, Rissa Jackson had never spoken at a conference, and now she's just wrapped up her Grand Slam at Laracon US, like done all 4 of them in her first year. Daniel Colborn, same thing, all 4 of them in his first year. Joe Tannenbaum is going to do all 4 of them in his first year when he speaks at Laracon AU in November. So it's like all of these things. Like Joe was an actor. We've got someone speaking at Laracon AU this year that was a chemistry major that is now an engineering team lead. We've got Aaron Francis himself started life as an accountant, and now he's Aaron Francis. So all of these things, when you think about it, they're all kind of the same notion of just doing things and putting yourself out there, and who knows what good unexpected things come your way. To borrow and again paraphrase our Laravel dad in Aaron Francis.
Yeah, but it's so true though. Like you show up and you just put stuff out there, and then eventually something sticks and something like
Mm-hmm.
moves your career forward or moves your life
Yep.
forward, and it's just sort of amazing. Like you know, that's like me doing this podcast. I know you host the Laravel News podcast. We were just talking
Mm-hmm.
before we started. Like I've really never been on it, and I didn't really want to be on it, and now I'm
Yeah,
like getting more comfortable. And it's like, well, if you don't throw yourself out there, then nothing good's going to happen. So you're just going to be behind the computer all
exactly
day.
right.
So yeah, it's pretty sweet. So what actually like what got you into podcasting originally? Because you've been doing it what for 10 years now?
Since 2016, I think, is when Jake and I started North Meet South. So yeah, it's been a part of 10 years. It just seemed like the thing to do at the time.
Hmm.
Everyone was starting a podcast back then, and it was a way to communicate with the Laravel community. And it's like it feels a lot of the time like a one-way communication.
Hmm.
That Jake and I get together every other week on North Meet South. We get together every other week and we do Laravel news, and we talk about stuff, and it feels like an echo chamber. But every now and then you'll come across someone. Jake said he met heaps of people at Laracon US this year that came up and said, thanks for the podcast, thanks for everything you do. And it's like you don't really realize when you're doing the podcasting because people don't always run to the comments unless you're doing something diabolical. You're farming for engagement or you've got controversial takes. Like people were just like, oh yeah, there was a podcast episode, and like people listen. Like we see that people continue to listen to it all these years later, so it's not all that bad. But yeah, it was just a way of putting my ideas and my thoughts out there. It sometimes serves as a bit of a like status update for my boss, who I know listens to the podcast, because a day or two later he's like, so that's what you worked on last week. So it's yeah, and it's like it's good to stay in touch with Jake because of the time difference and like the physical distance. Keeping in touch with like we've seen each other's kids grow up, and we've been in touch for a long period of time. So, and
I
it's
was gonna
just you're
go.
gone.
I was gonna say I was gonna ask you about that. How can y'all schedule that? Because like right now I'm East Coast time, and I think me and you are like 12 hours different. No, is it 24 hour 12 hours difference? I
16. Oh no,
think.
yeah,
Is
you're
this
forward. Yeah, 12. Yep.
Yeah, so it's 8 o'clock p.m. my time, which I think is 8 o'clock a.m. your time. And it wasn't the easiest one to schedule. So how do y'all
Yeah,
do that each week with kids and
yeah.
life? I guess is the right way.
We, yeah. I mean, I do it on my lunch breaks usually, which is right after Jake's kids get to bed, and that's just what we have found has worked for us. And it's always one of us messaging the other on recording day to like make sure, hey, we still on, because sometimes things come up. Sometimes I've got to go and pick the kids up early. Sometimes Jake's held up somewhere, so it's, and we do reschedule from time to time. We try really hard to make sure that we always get our episodes out on Thursday, but sometimes life gets in the way and we just have to bump it a day, or we skip a week sometimes because someone's had to travel. So yeah, it's just a matter of keeping on top of it. I would love to do something more local, which is why I started doing Ripples, because Greg and I are only an hour apart. So that makes life definitely a lot easier to schedule, because we don't have to reason about times and things happening and whatever else. But yeah, two of the and it helps that two of those podcasts, it's Jake and I, right? So we know that the schedule is the same. It's just we alternate between what we're talking about, which is good. Ripples has been a bit more difficult to manage because it's as soon as you introduce a third person, you're now trying to schedule 3 time zones, which gets a bit like, because we're close, it's okay, but like when it's me, Jake, and a third person, that can get a bit, especially when they're in like Europe, it gets a bit funny. So, but yeah, there's that, and then that's only 3 of the podcasts. You mentioned I've got more podcasts than kids. I've got another one which I kind of picked up for a bit, and then didn't really do a lot beyond like 8 episodes, which was Push Pop, which was just like a look back, look forward kind of thing that fizzed out after I did Laracon last year. And another one that I'm going to pick up again in the next few weeks, which is like seasonal, is the Road to Laracon, which we'll use to interview Laracon AU speakers. So that will be coming out again in the next little while as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That brought me to another question. Is the So the Laracon AU, like Twitter account, LinkedIn account, you have all these little videos of the speakers. Is that all coming from the recordings from that Road to Laracon, or is that these are just separate
No,
things
these
that
are
you're just
separate.
doing now?
Yeah. Yeah, this was just like an idea that I had very last minute last year. And like the speakers were very good to me and they all kind of really took on the challenge of doing it. And so this year it was like part of the submission process was we are going to ask you to do this and it will be like a planned out thing that we're doing. So we've got I think 4 or 5 left of them. There'll be another one coming out later today, later tonight for you, I suppose. Um, and then I think we've probably got 3 or 4 left. And then we've got some other social media stuff coming as well. We've got, just just to keep everything front of mind for people in the lead up to November, as we try and sell the last few tickets to the conference.
I love that. So speaking of time zones, like, you know, like where's most of the Laravel world? I guess like when you jump on the internet, is pretty much everybody's day done, and you just kind of catch up that way. I mean, it seems like with me and you, we have such a big overlap, even though we talk a lot. I miss a lot of stuff you do, and you probably miss a lot of stuff I do just because of how like the different social media feeds like come up and show stuff. Is that ever a struggle for you, or is that more like it's just fine and that's just the way it is?
Yeah, there's the social, especially in the last 18 months or whatever it's been since all the APIs got shut down and Tweetbot was not, because I used to use Tweetbot all the time, and Tweetbot gave you a chronological, no algorithm, nothing. It was just like this is everything, and sometimes there would be I'd wake up in the morning and there'd be hundreds, and I was a Twitter completionist. I would like scroll and read everything. So now it's a bit more hit and miss. Like even in the following feed, it's not everything, and things are out of order, and it tries to sort things based on like popularity and how many replies there are in the threads and all this like weird, like it's kind of chronological but kind of not. And so obviously the dramatic stuff always bubbles up and you see that, but there's bits and pieces that get missed, like, and you just pick up or you don't, and someone will tell you about it if it's really important. But I like to try and keep tabs on it. There's a bit of overlap in my afternoons with the European crew, but most of what happens in the US, which is where the majority of like the active Laravel people are, happens while I sleep. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, you know, this year I actually went to that Laravel Lab in London, and it was wild. Just waking up and being like nothing going on the internet,
Yeah.
and then it's all of a
Yep.
sudden like we would go to the conference, and it was like after it was over, everything, the whole day was over. So it's like then
Mhm.
everything's flooding in. It was like it was kind of hard to retrain my brain how all that works.
Yeah.
But now that you come back, it's like, well, I can't keep up anyway because it's like going too fast now.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, it's time zones are interesting. It's the
Yeah.
man's greatest invention.
Yeah. That's right. You learn to deal with it.
Yes.
You don't. I mean, I don't have a choice. You just have to go with the flow.
Yeah. So moving on. This is a way back question. When did you first find Laravel? What
Um,
version or what year?
yeah, I think I did touch on it a little bit earlier. I think it was probably around 2011, like around then. Maybe. Yeah, I feel like it was 2011, and it was like in the version 3. Like there was no composer yet. It was all of the like built-in plugin things. The first time I really
The
got
bundles.
the bundles, yeah. The first time I really got to look at it was probably version 4.1 when I'd like transitioned to working at an agency, and we were building our own, we had our own in-house framework at the time, and so, or in-house CMS. So this was like looking at Laravel as a way to kind of improve on that, to modernize it a little bit. So yeah, it's been, what are we, 2014 now? So it's been 13 years.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. The sort of I was talking to somebody else about it. It's like that version. It was like late version 3, early version 4. It seems like Laravel sort of just wanted. I don't want to say took over PHP, but that's when it really started to build
Really,
a lot of
yeah.
traction because you meet a lot of people that came in right around that same time,
Mm.
which
And I mean, you were there right at the Genesis, working with Taylor at User Escape.
Yeah, but I still think like one was only like what, a week. It came out like a week, and then version two
Yeah,
came out. I want to say I
yeah.
was, because I actually helped build the bundle site when I worked at Userscape, and
Hmm.
when that was when me and Taylor worked together. Um, and then of course then Composer sort of took over everything, and it was way better with Composer than trying to install some bundles and stuff. But yeah, it's yeah. I think I found it, man. I don't know how many years ago that was, but just never left. I was like,
Yeah.
this is my people. I like Laravel.
Yeah, and it's managed to its credit and to Taylor's credit, managed to keep a lot of that community, a lot of that feel from those early days. It'll be interesting to see how things go now with um the funding and all of that. But I don't like the episode hasn't come out yet, but the episode I talk a little bit about it. I'm optimistic for what this actually means, not just for Laravel, not just for Taylor and his business, but for the Laravel community at large, and even like the trickle down this will have on PHP as a language and as a wider ecosystem. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
For sure. I'm very bullish. It's going to be good for everybody. Not only like you said for Taylor and that team, but like now we're getting PHP in the front of CEOs' minds because
Yeah,
it's on the front page of Fortune magazine and probably
right.
Bloomberg and whoever else at this point. So it's definitely going to get into more eyeballs than just developers, and in theory,
Yeah,
that should help everybody in the community. The other thing I love is how like Laravel seems like it has not gotten stale and since it was created. I
yeah.
think that's sort of the demise of a lot of the other frameworks that was in the PHP space at those early days. They kind of,
Hmm.
they had a big bang and then they just kind of fizzled and just didn't get
Yeah,
updates, didn't get anything. And then where, Taylor and Laravel, they just keep pushing the bar and trying to, make everything better. So
yeah.
I think that's awesome.
And it's always, I think those other frameworks, maybe they always try to do their own thing. They always try to innovate, where Laravel has never been afraid or shy to look at what other communities are doing and to
Hmm.
borrow ideas and to improve ideas. And like it goes the other way as well. There are things in Laravel now that Symfony has done for a while, and there are things that Symfony does now that Laravel did, and there are things in Rails. I mean, Active Record, Eloquent comes from Rails, but there are things in the Rails ecosystem that have come from Laravel. So the ideas are good enough to cross between language and framework boundaries means that everything keeps going. Not everyone's going to come up with all of the original ideas in Laravel or in Rails or in Symfony or wherever, but that they can be transitioned in a way that they are like the same thing but done in like the Laravel way or the Rails way or the Symfony way, means that all of this keeps moving forward. And you know I think Taylor was probably the first one really that found a way to commercialize open source in such a way that maintaining the free stuff was viable as like a full-time thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think, speaking about the commercial side, I think back to sort of the Code Igniter slash Expression Engine days. They had Expression Engine as the commercial entity, and then they had Code Igniter as sort of the framework that sort of came out of Expression Engine, but they were never. I don't know if you used either one of them way back in the day, but they were not like one-to-one pairing basically. You if Expression Engine was so different code-wise than Code Igniter itself, it's like you couldn't just marry them together. Like even though you knew Code Igniter, you might not know all the the Expression Engine, and I think that was one of the cool things with sort of Laravel and everything he creates out of Laravel. It's like it's married right to the framework. If you're used
Yeah.
to Laravel, you can just pick up any of these tools that we use simply. Of
Yeah.
course, and then Forge is just all the other tools are just like awesome to use, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, this should have been a product, 20 years ago. This is amazing.
Yeah. And like there's third party things out there, there's alternatives and things like that are maybe cheaper, but that number one, using the first party tools, you are funding the development of the open source stuff and the framework and things like that. But as you say, you're going to have that familiarity of experience when you use any of those things. And like there's friction points for different people at different times, but by and large, those tools, and that's going to be the same for everything. The thing that is built for the 98% use case is going to raise the IR of 2%. But I'll take 98% any day.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, all right. So now I've got a few random questions for you. Do you want me to jump in here? And you can just
Let's do it.
answer them just off the top of your head here.
Sure.
Wait. Wait, I'm jumping. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So let me back up. I have just three more questions, and then
Your
we'll
show.
end.
You do what you want to do.
I love it. So I have three more questions. We'll get through that, and then we'll end the show. And then
Okay.
I'll ask you some random questions at the end
Okay.
that might not make it to the final cut. Um, all right. So when you're not working, podcasting, doing anything else, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do outside off the computer?
Well, I mean, I don't like doing it, but I have got back into it. I've started running again. I used to love playing basketball, but my knees have finally said it's time to stop that. So I've stopped playing basketball. Still love watching it. Still love watching Australian rules footy. A lot of my time outside of that really is just spent with the kids, especially now they're at a fun age, 4 and 6, and it's just they're always talking, they're always discovering things. Like it's fun watching my eldest like learning to read now. It's just and he's getting more confident with it, and so he's like he'll just we're sitting in the car and he'll be reading the song names that come up on the on the infotainment. Like it's this, I'm like, it is this. It's very good.
I
And
love
so
that.
yeah, that's where a lot of my time goes now. And then like at the end of the day, I know that for a lot of people, like you love your job, you program, and like I like the idea of going and sitting on the computer after everyone's gone to bed and like programming, but I can't. I just it's TV, like 1 or 2 episodes of something, and then bed, and then get up and do it all again.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've been trying to do a much better, work life balance. It's like, I want to work from, whatever 8 to 5, and I want to be done and just shut off the computer, even though it's at home and like, I can do it. And there's some things that might
Hmm.
need to be done. It's like, you got to have that, or otherwise, like, everybody suffers. And my wife's like, you're not paying me attention. And my kids are like,
Yeah,
you're ignoring me. So
yeah,
it's the fun part of working from home like we do is the, that conversion there.
hmm.
Um, so sort of to transition that one, um, what advice would you give to developers looking, um, that might want to? I think I worded this question wrong on here. Let me rephrase this. Um, what's the number one piece of advice you have received in relation to web development from maybe somebody else?
I'm the worst person to ask that because my memory, like I couldn't tell you any specific piece of advice, and I couldn't tell you any specific person that gave it to me. I remember one person in my formative years who was the absolute worst teacher, but he was also the best teacher in that he would take me through a problem and he would show me like we could do it like this, we could do like he'd show me different ways to do it. And then at the end of that, he'd be like, "Did you get that?" I'd be like, "Yeah." And then we would have a social chat, like, and he knew this every time. Like he would then distract me from what he just told me, and then he'd like close his editor and be like, "All right, we'll go and like do that." So it like he showed me lots of different ways to do things, and he was a big part of my formative programming. But he was like just a really bad teacher. One piece of advice that I would impart just through learned experience is to not get bogged down in the minutia of programming. Um, don't don't there's no perfect way in the quote unquote real world. There's no perfect or right or correct way. Yes, there's correct and like academic ways to do things, and yes, there are patterns and processes and things like that that we follow because they are tried and true and repeated and all of that. I get that. But when you are learning to program, I think the most important and impactful way that you can do that is to just get something on the page, to write some code that does something in the browser. You're not you're not building a Fortune 500 company. You are learning to program for the first time. And so whatever you can do that like makes you enjoy what you're doing without getting bogged down in the details of like how specific things work or should work or whether they're like the conversation we've had this week is around Larastan and whether or not that should be part of the default Laravel installation. None of that stuff matters when you are learning to program. um, I think Laravel goes a long way to teaching you how to ship something. which is the framework mantra. It was a big part of the keynote this year, is to just ship. And like when you are learning, the best way to keep the motivation and the energy going is to just ship. And that is to do whatever it takes to make yourself happy with, like, you put something out into the world and you can revisit it later. Like, people need to remember that you can change what you've written. You own the code, you can change it.
Yeah, it's not a painting. You can actually adjust it later.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
that's actually how I got started though. It's the same way. It was like I had this product idea in my mind, and I was like, just do whatever I can do to get it something that would work. And back then, it was like this was before framework, so you had PHP and I think was ASP, and then I just used like I think no, I started off with front page, and then I was using Dreamweaver because they had all these little bindings and stuff that you could like
Hmm.
sync it to your database and stuff. And oh, it was terrible. Like you could, I bet if I looked at that now, it would be,
Yeah,
you would say that was just trash. But it worked, and it was like, hey,
but it worked.
this is amazing. I love this. You know, I love this career, and that's what sort of inspired me and made me drive to want to continue down this path all these years
Yeah.
later. It's
Let the
exciting.
minutia and the specifics and the correctness, like, let that ruin your life later. Just enjoy it when you're trying to learn it for the first time.
Exactly. Um, so one final question: what have you been excited about lately?
I mean, Laracon Australia. I'm very excited just about the direction we're taking. I've this never happened to me with any of the previous ones, but I've been waking up in the middle of the night just from like the weirdest dreams about rocking up on day one, and I'm like, I'm there on the wrong day and there's no one there, or setting up the theater, and one of the theater staff was on some scaffolding and they fell down and broke. Like, just these weird things that like have never happened in previous Laracon. So I'm really excited about doing a bigger event, like a bigger Laracon. Previously it was like some talks and an after party. This year we're really trying to connect people, and I'm really excited about that prospect, and I hope that it resonates with the people. And I hope, like, I know I said before, it's a long way to travel for us to go to the US, but we would do it because the US is like, the big main event. And I would love to put on an event that makes people really seriously consider, maybe coming to do AU in the future. I know that there's a few people. I'm not going to out them. That's up to them. But I know that there's a few people that are making the journey because they love coming to Australia, because they love the experience that they've had here. And I hope that we can be a destination conference in the future. So yeah,
I love it.
I'm
I
really
love it.
really excited about it. And we're 6 weeks out now, so
Yes, it's gonna be a great event. You have my full confidence because
thank you.
this is your couple years into this. You got this, and you always done a professional job. But
Thanks,
um,
man.
if you don't have anything else to add, I think we're just going to end the episode here. I want to thank Michael Dyrynda for joining us, talking about life and Laracon AU and everything else in between. So
Thanks
thanks
for
again
having
for
me.
watching, and thanks for being here.
No worries.
Perfect. All right. So we did the hard part. Now the really hard part.
You gonna end your life before you do the really hard part?
Wait. Let me get my thing out again. Okay. Before we continue, I wanted to look. Okay, we have 131 people watching on Twitter X.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty good.
I did tweet and say what were the pros and cons, and nobody responded, so I figured nobody was even online. But apparently, there's 131 people there, so that's fun. All right, so right now, I just like I said in the beginning, I just have two little questions. Try to keep the answers to less than 60 seconds, so I can make
Sure.
them into a short. And man, we already answered one. Been been terrible at
Jumping through.
yeah. All right, here we go. I got one. All right, ready? What is the one Laravel feature you couldn't live without?
Oh, collections. Need those collections. Always want to like abandon every single temporary variable and figure out like how can I loop through all of this in just a beautiful, elegant, exquisite collection.
Perfect. Um, I've already brought this up in a few other, but there's this guy on Instagram, and he like cooks with his daughter, and then like at the end when they finish baking their little cakes and stuff, he like looks at her and he's like, "How was it?" And she's like, "Not perfect," and it just makes me laugh every time. So every time I'm like, "Perfect." Oh,
Good.
I'll have to send it to you because it's hilarious.
Yeah. Send it.
Man, what was some of my other good questions? Hold on. Do you have to run real fast?
No, I've already done my running today.
Oh. Dun, dun, dun. Let me go to. Okay, let's do a podcast question.
Okay.
So, Michael, when you're doing podcasts, like what tools or do you sort of recommend just for somebody that has never podcasted to get in and start doing it?
For a long time, I just like recorded audio in QuickTime, had the other person record in QuickTime, and then I would edit it using Hindenburg, which is like an audio editing thing. More recently, I have been using Riverside. It is very simple. It's I think free to get started, but it will record my video. It will record the other person's video, the audio. It will do like transcription for you. It allows you to do like very simple editing, export audio. Basically, if you want to get a podcast out there, you want to have as little editing overhead as possible because editing is the worst part of doing this whole thing. I hate it, but I do it anyway.
I confirm.
So yeah, Riverside is really good to just kind of encapsulate all of that stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, the man, yeah, they don't tell you that about like doing the video podcast. Like I'm trying to do everything in one take because it's like if I go in and start slicing stuff up, then it's like 30-minute podcast is like 5 hours of editing time, and it's like nobody has time for this. But I will confirm Riverside has been pretty good. I kind of enjoy the little editor, but I've been doing more in CapCut with the so this one is, I guess you call this a video podcast now. I don't know what the distinction is, and but some people love audio still. I've never been a big listener of podcasts. I'm the worst.
I can't watch because I put it on in the background and it just like disappears, and I just miss the whole thing.
But how do you pay attention with it in your ears while you're doing things?
The same can be true. Like I only listen to podcasts when I'm running. I can't be working and listening to podcasts. I can't have my attention in two places. When I run, I can like focus on that because it takes the focus away from the fact that my legs hurt or my back's sore. I'm running out of breath.
There's a question. How long do you have to? So let's just say you don't run and you're out of shape and overweight. And you start running, and you're like, "Oh, I'll just go out and run like a half a mile," and then you get this rib cage pain, this RC pain, and you're like, "I'm done because this hurts." How long do you have to run before all that goes away? I don't think I've ever made it that far.
Yeah, look, it depends. I think on the person. For me, I can stop running for 3 months and get back out. Like I will stop running, but I will still walk every day. I won't run during winter. It's too cold. I hate it. I don't like the cold air in. My hands go to sleep. It's awful. So I will usually stop running between May and July, just until it like starts to get a bit more reasonable in the mornings. And then I could probably do 2 kilometers, which is what, like 1.3 miles thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How cold is your winters, by the way? I know you said cold.
Like I say cold, but it's too cold for me. It's like we get down into single digits. It's not negative. It doesn't freeze. We don't get snow or anything like that. But it's cold for me.
What's that in American units?
Like 30,
40s?
40 Fahrenheit. Yeah.
40s.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We, which it depends on where you live. Like where I live, it usually doesn't freeze either. But we would mountain bike pretty much all winter. Unless it rained, and then then the trails are all wet for like 6 months. Then you can't ride. But yeah, I'm the same way. I don't enjoy the cold weather unless I'm golfing. I can golf in the cold.
You can just golf. It's like when I start, it's I do 3 runs a week. When I start, it's 2Ks, 2Ks, 3Ks, and then it's 2.5, 2.5, 3.5, and then 3, 3, 4, and then 3.5, 3.5, 4.5, and then eventually 4, 4, 5, and then I work my way up to 5, which takes me about 6 weeks. So I'll hit 5 this week.
Nice. Have you ever made it up to like the marathon level?
Nah, the furthest I have ever run is 12 kilometers. And that was like, we did a fun run. This was like 16 years ago was the last time I did it, I think. And it's the furthest that I'm happy to run now is 7 kilometers. And that's because that is one loop of like the lake that I run on. So yep, seven's enough. That's about as much as my body can take at this stage.
It's funny. So this was, man, I can't remember how many years ago this was, but Laracon, New York City. Michael sets up this Laravel Run Club through Central Park, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go do this. And then they were just like sprinting the whole way, and I'm over here like doing my 12, 14-minute miles, and
stopping to take photos.
You gotta have somebody to document it. And but yeah, that was terrible. I was like, whose idea was this? This was not. I should get like a little scooter and like chase you all around on the scooter.
I'm gonna have to hit up Joe Tannenbaum when he's here. We'll go running through the Botanic Gardens.
Is he a runner too?
It sounds like it. Yeah, he said. I think he tweeted he went for a run. He was doing some thinking while he was running. So we're gonna cruise together.
Sounds awesome. All right, so we are running up on an hour, and I have to go to bed. I don't, it is nighttime here in the beautiful North Carolina. But hey, I want to thank you for coming on and doing this with me.
That's fine. Thanks for having me on.
So I guess my next question too, before we hang up, is Laracon AU November. Do you have a preference on when this goes out? Because I've been editing and publishing on Fridays. I think we have like a 3-week backlog, but I don't want to put it too. I don't want to put it too close to like anything we talked about here, like people hear it and then want to buy tickets and it's already too late. So if I need to bump you closer up or anything like that,
I think like beginning of October will be fine. If you got 3 weeks in the can, that's cool.
Beginning, okay. I mean, I have a bunch of people coming, so like it's not a problem. I can even do 2 a week and then push yours out one of the other days. But
that's right. Like I don't know, the 4th or the week after that, or the 11th would be all right. It's still a month before the conference anyway, so.
Let me get my calendar.
But yeah, we've got like we're still on the live. I think we've got like 30 early bird tickets left, and then another 20 after that. So we've 50 tickets left total.
Sweet. Oh yeah. Hold on. Let me check the YouTube. I don't know how this works. So this is the first live stream I've ever done. Oh, here it is. Well, we only have 4 watching on our live show.
Yeah, it's fine. Everyone's asleep.
I know. Eric Van Johnson. Let me just read one comment. Front page for the win. I did very inappropriate things with that software.
Nothing's changed though. Eric's still doing inappropriate things in Vim now.
Ed, is there any more questions? I don't think so. I don't know how to actually look at questions other than like YouTube. I don't think you can do it on Twitter.
There's the chat in Riverside. If you go to the chat, you can see.
Yeah, I didn't see anything there.
There's
wait.
Two different chats. Yeah, there's the live stream chat, and then there's
there it goes.
Yeah, then there's the studio chat, and then there's the you and me chat.
Oh, sweet. Oh, fancy. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Yeah. If you liked watching us do this live, we'll do it live. Let us know. We'll keep doing it live. If you don't, then I will keep doing it the old way and edit after and all that mess. So either way, we're going to edit after. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And Michael, thank you again for joining me. And you have a wonderful whatever day it is. Thursday.
Enjoy your sleep.
All right. Wait. I have to stop.